What's up, everybody? This is Warhawk Beyond 2040 in the house, bringing to you another edition of the Batwoman Season 1 review series, and I've just finished watching episode 8 entitled A Mad Tea Party, and all I've got to say is, in spite of the fact that the show has been a little bit slow, that doesn't mean that it's been rubbish or anything, but it has been a little bit slow, but it has been slowly getting better. But I am going to go out and say that episode 8 is definitely one of the best episodes of this season so far. I would definitely put this one up there with episode 5. Mine is A Long and Sad Tale, where we learned about what really happened to Alice in her days as Beth and what happened to her in the aftermath of the crash in a series of flashbacks. This episode was really dark, sad, at times a bit brutal, but overall this was amazing, absolutely amazing. I loved every second of it. We do get a death in this episode, which I'll get into momentarily, but this was definitely one of the best episodes of this season. I absolutely loved every second of it. So, this is the last episode of Batwoman before the Crisis crossover, which she will be a part of. So I'll get to that a bit later on, but for the time being, let's do this. Let's talk about episode 8, A Mad Tea Party. So this episode kicks off with Batwoman beating the crap out of one of Alice's henchmen, and she ends up stealing his jacket. Now this was actually a really good opening scene. You know, this reminded me a lot of the Batman Arkham games, and there was a little bit of a homage to Nightwing as well, because Batwoman absolutely pounds the crap out of the henchman with her stick in a very similar manner to what Nightwing does in the Nightwing comics. So this was a really good scene, and this episode had a lot of great Batwoman action, and the opening scene didn't disappoint at all. So this was a great way to kick things off, and it didn't disappoint one bit, and I absolutely loved it. It was absolutely tremendous. Batwoman then takes the jacket to Luke, who finds a phone in its pocket and uses it to trace the location of where Alice could be. And Kate goes to confront Alice, and she confronts her about the hiring of Rifle to kill her. Alice confirms that she specifically helped Kate not to die. So even though she's a villain, they have a very up and down relationship. It's almost like Alice is enjoying playing this little game with her sister, and we got to see that yet again. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, Alice has really grown into a tremendous villain for this season, and she owned it again this week. She really kicked a lot of ass in this episode, and she didn't disappoint. And every time her and Kate are in the same room and they have a scene or they have some sort of confrontation, it never gets old, it never gets boring. In fact, it just gets better and better, and you're just wondering, where is this game going to end up? How is this going to all play out? So we got to see that yet again in this episode. Also, in this scene, it was confirmed indeed that the Kanes are indeed Jewish, and Kate proves this by pointing out to Alice that she has kept a picture of her of all these years. Now this picture of these two was taken at the girls' bat mitzvah, the Jewish coming of age ritual for girls that happens when they turn either 12 or 13, depending on which branch of Judaism is followed. So we got a little bit more of an insight into their Jewish heritage. Now in the Batwoman comics, it's been mentioned already that Kate Kane is indeed Jewish, so I thought the way they referenced that in this episode was done really well, and they didn't harp on it too much. So this was handled very, very well, and I thought they did a really good job with that. So this was really good to see that addressed in this episode. Also in this episode, we saw Jacob Kane get kidnapped by a group of Alice's henchmen, and he wakes up chained to the ceiling in Alice's lair. Alice confronts him about believing Catherine's lies about the skull fragments and admits that he had made the wrong call. Alice then warns him about her mad tea party, which someone is going to be killed at. So, for about a few episodes now, Alice has been teasing about this huge tea party that's going to go down in Gotham. So we finally got to see that little story get paid off in a very big way. Now, it's not been said who's going to die in this episode, but we do finally learn who it turns out to be, and it does feel like a surprise, but at the same time, it's not like, oh, is that it? You kind of guessed that this person was going to meet their end, but you just didn't know when. So we finally got to see that take place, and we finally learned who it was that indeed met their end, who I'm going to reveal in a moment. Mary invites Kate to a benefits gala which is set to honour her mum Catherine. Kate of course refuses to go, and Mary points out the hypocrisy of her giving Alice a second chance but not her stepmother. She then reveals that her dad Jacob has agreed to go to the event, little knowing that it's really Mouse in disguise. So you can kind of see the seeds are being planted for this eventual tea party that Alice has been referencing for the past couple of episodes. So, boy oh boy, it's going to be some gala that Mary's never going to forget anytime soon. Kate then comes to the conclusion that Jacob is not really who he says he is, and it's actually Mouse in disguise. So she goes to confront Alice yet again and argues that there's still good in her. Alice reveals Jacob's location, but it ends up being nothing more than a bust. So the game is on, everyone. Here we go. So Mary, Catherine and Jacob, Mouse in disguise, all arrive in a limousine and all drink champagne. I've got a bad feeling about this, in the words of Obi-Wan. So during the gala, Catherine accepts her award, but the teleprompter soon changes to words from Alice, who Catherine notices is in the crowd. Oh boy. Here we go. Catherine is forced to read Alice's speech, which exposes her and all of her bad deeds and frauds. Yeah, I don't like the sound of this. And before you know it, Catherine's nose starts to bleed and she eventually collapses. Mary rushes to Catherine's aid, and Alice and the fake crows lock everybody inside the building. Batwoman arrives on the scene and takes out all the crows. Meanwhile, Alice confronts Mary and Catherine and confirms that the champagne that they all drank was poisoned courtesy of Hamilton Dynamics, and that there's no antidote. However, Alice, being the smart girl that she is, has a natural antidote, a desert rose from Coriana, and if she gets a genuine apology from Catherine, she will agree to give her the antidote. Catherine generally apologises, but Alice doesn't believe her, of course, and Alice gives her the tea, just as Mary begins to show the same symptoms. Boy oh boy, that's Alice. She sure is a real sly fox, isn't she? And she's proved it once again. She's a lot more smarter than she looks, trust me. She gives a whole new meaning to looks can be very deceiving. So just as Catherine gets Mary to drink the tea, Alice makes her escape and she's confronted by Kate, this time in her Batwoman costume, and she nearly chokes the life out of Alice. You know, at this point, after all the horrible things that Alice has done, I was actually really hoping that Batwoman would just beat the crap out of her, but that didn't happen. Not yet anyway. And Kate lets go and Alice escapes. Meanwhile, Mary and Catherine have a heart-to-heart, and Mary drinks the antidote and Catherine dies. Real shame, really, because I really thought that Catherine wasn't going to die. I was actually hoping that she would redeem herself by the end of the season, so I was quite surprised they killed her off this early. So the real Jacob is arrested and he's taken into custody, and the news becomes public that Catherine is dead. Kate visits Mary about it and she argues that her mother isn't the evil person that Kate and Alice think she is. She asks if Alice was worth losing Catherine over. Kate says no, of course. Later, Kate destroys a framed picture of herself and Alice in the Batcave, and she then goes to visit Jacob in prison and admits that she won't stand in his way when he fights Alice. boy oh boy, the stage is really setting itself up for this impending confrontation. So here we go. It's going to happen. So overall, a very good episode. Lots of great action. Really enjoyed this a lot. Very interested to see where this is going to head after Crisis, so to speak. Speaking of Crisis, the next time I'll be back to talk about Batwoman will be episode 9, because as we all know, Batwoman is going to be part of the Crisis. And just as I mentioned in the Arrow video that I've done, I'm going to be doing a Crisis on Infinite Earths review series, which I've already put the intro out there for everyone to see. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reviewing 3 parts of this December, and I'll be doing the 2 parts in January. So make sure you check those out when they do come up. So with that all said, I'm going to leave this here for you guys. What did you think of this week's episode? Do you think it was good? Do you think Catherine died too early? Do you think she could have been redeemed? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and the next time I will see you will be for the Crisis. So till then, take care everybody.